Second here. Welcome everyone to Education Today. I'm your host, Scott Nunes. I'm super pumped here to have my buddy, Dr. Kevin Leichtman, joining us all the way from Ohio right now, right?
Would you believe I'm actually out in Florida right now at a wedding? Look, I escaped Ohio in the middle of winter. This is perfect. I'm going back in a week, so the snow will be waiting for me, I'm sure. But
Wow.
little break.
What's the temperature differential there between Ohio and Florida?
It's wild. Last week it was snowing in Ohio and beautiful in Florida. We flew out, and all of a sudden Ohio skyrocketed. It was like 60. I think it was 65 degrees when we left. I'm like, what just happened? Like, it's supposed to be like dreary and snowy and awful, so we could come here and get a nice break. But it's nice in both places right now, so go figure.
It changed on you. I think it was 2 winters ago, so not quite last, or maybe it was last winter, I think, for FUTC. My buddy Glenn Irvin and his co-host for the On Education podcast, Mike Washburn, they're both from cold places. Mike's from Canada and Glenn's from South Dakota. And I want to say in both places, it was something like negative 20 degrees. And then they went to Florida and it was 80 degrees. So just complete difference in
That's
terms
how it's
of temperatures, right?
Yeah.
So very cool. Glad that you're getting a little R&R, and congrats to the newlyweds. And next thing I want to do is just remind everybody, jump in the chat. Let us know that you're here. If you have any questions for Dr. Leichtman, let me know. I'll throw them up on the screen and I can ask them. And thanks for tuning in. I see a bunch of people here already and more joining in by the second. What I would like you to do now is just let us know your story. How did you get started in education? Where are you at and where are you going?
All right. So, quick rundown. I was actually a not so great student. So, when I'll go all the way back, when I was in grade school, I was like first, second, third grade. Remember how we used to do those little books, like the little flip books and, write a story, right? So my mom saved those. And at the back, there was always a little about the author section. Every time I wrote, I want to be a teacher. I do not remember doing that. But I was apparently like always into that idea. I always wanted to be a teacher. I remember talking about it a lot, but I was a really bad student by the standards of my school, right? So I was in a small school, pretty well-to-do community. Everybody was expected to go to college. I mean, that was like bare minimum, go to college. And I was teetering at that 2.0. I was like, will he graduate? Won't he? Not sure. My test scores were okay, but I was not a great student. So I managed to get through, and I had to beg and plead to get into college, but I did. I went to my first college and quickly dropped out. So, yeah, too hard, can't do it, dropped out. Decided to try again. I kept working at it. I'm like, all right. And my brilliant idea was I'm going to go to Ohio State, like the largest school in my area. So I transferred over there, and I immediately failed out. I think I lasted 1 quarter there. So I ended up being a college dropout and college fail out. And I'm like, this isn't really the path of a teacher. I was working at, a minimum wage job. I'm like, is this it? This might be it. And, I made some changes in my life. I made some tough decisions. And I ended up getting accepted to this really tiny college out in Dayton, Ohio called Wright State University. And they gave me one more chance on academic probation. They were like, all right, if you get even a D, you're out of the school. That's it. Wow. Like, we're keeping you on a tight rope, okay? So I transferred there. I think my GPA was like 1.8, 1.7, something like that. And by the time I graduated, I had a 3.5. So I made some big changes. I was able to come through. I transferred from there to Florida Atlantic University. I received my master's and doctorate from there in curriculum and instruction. While I was completing my doctorate, I started teaching. I did every grade level from 7th through 12th. So I've been all over the place. So, I'm kind of one of those stories of could have been this way, ended up this way. And it's funny. I think I always had that potential, but I never thought I was a good student. And I very much held myself back. So
Yeah.
I don't, that's a little of the background. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think it was really you that held yourself back, or do you feel like, the system and, maybe some of your teachers, some of your peers and community held you back or helped towards holding you back, or was it all internal?
I think the right answer to that is just yes. Right. I think there were moments where I just got really down on myself. Like, I don't look like these other students. There were kids in my school that had 4.0s their entire school career. And I didn't study like them, and I didn't understand material like they did. And so I always compared myself to that stick, and I always felt like I was coming up short. So while that was happening, yeah, other outside factors didn't help me either, right? There were some teachers that really looked down on me. This kid's a troublemaker. This kid just wants to talk and play. He doesn't want to engage in the work. They wouldn't play to my strengths or even find out what strengths I had. So it definitely, both of those things played a role, right? And that's not to say I didn't have good teachers. I had some excellent teachers as well, but it's the common high school experience, right? And middle school and all that, where I had some teachers that really dumped on me. And if you're already kind of dumping on yourself,
Yeah, that's not going to
it's
help.
a whirlwind. Yeah. So for sure, it all contributed.
What propelled you to take those added risks when you were on academic probation and just like hunker down and lay it all on the table?
Mm-hmm. So I think when I transferred to Ohio State, I still didn't feel like I was in danger, right? I just felt like, oh, maybe like this one circumstance went bad, or this one class went bad, or I could blame it on individual situations.
Mm-hmm.
But once you fail out of college, now you have to deal with the idea that you're a failure, right? Because now,
Right.
by the standards of a university, I was considered a failure. I was considered not worth even being invited to be on campus, right? So that made me really question, like, am I a college level student? Am I good enough to do this? And I think having that, that wake up call ended up being a really good thing for me. And I'm always thankful for my experience at Ohio State. They did me no wrong. I didn't hold my end of the bargain, but
Mm.
that was able to show me where I was falling short. And the biggest place I was falling short was I was still comparing myself to everyone else. I enjoyed English a lot, but I'd be in English classes and I would be comparing, like, how many pages of notes did you write? How many pages did you write? I only wrote this many, right?
Right.
How many books did you read this week? Really, that many? And I wasn't that kind of student. And what I ended up finding was, I had strengths that were different than other students, but I never played to my strengths. I tried to be them, and I always fell short of who they were. So, I had to kind of realign my definition of what a good student was, and, what's the perfect student? Can I be that? And I had to allow myself to fit into whatever definition I had in my head. That was the big change for me.
Yeah, what really sticks out there to me, the big lesson and takeaway that I think anybody can kind of implement right away is play to your strengths. I too failed a lot. I was okay in high school. I really didn't have motivation beyond just being eligible, and my coach had a standard of a 3.0 or above, so I had to do that. And then in order to get my license, my mom raised it to a 3.5, so I had like a 3.68, something like that, to
That's
be
the
able
right
to get my
motivation.
license, right? So I didn't have this intrinsic motivation to do well in school. It felt like a game that I really didn't want to play. I didn't want to subscribe to those academic norms, right? I really wanted to kind of do it my way. And I thought, hey, I really like computers. I'm going to do that. And then when it came time for college, I kind of abandoned that dream, even though I still did graphic design on the side and web pages and things. I got into English and did okay. Started at a junior college. And then when I went to university, I too found myself in academic probation. I was doing well. I thought, I got this. I'm going to do something nobody's done before. And I took 21 units, which was a crazy amount, and was like
That's
planning
wild.
a wedding at the same time and working.
Mhm.
Not a good idea. Nobody should really do all those things. I went overkill. I should have just maybe done 15 units, right? Because I
Yeah.
had gone full time. I'm like,
Even that's pretty heavy.
right. I was like, full time, I got this while working. And then it was disastrous. So I got put on academic probation. And then similarly, I didn't know there was a miscommunication. I took a really hard course. It was a film course, and we had to do like this 30-page manuscript, and I just could not get it done. And so got an F in that course, and they said, hey, you're done here. And I had to really work through this outside program to get my GPA up. I couldn't mess up on any of the courses. I had to pay a lot of extra money out of pocket for that. And then I got back in and graduated from the university. And I think similarly, I don't remember what my exact GPA was. I think cumulatively, I brought it up to a 3. Yeah, big word. Brought it up to 3.2. But I aced everything after that.
That's
I
awesome. Congratulations.
Maybe got to be somewhere in there. Yeah, thank you. So it meant more, right?
Yeah.
And it gave me some of that grit and resilience. And I really had to decide I wanted it. And I think part of it was I wasn't willing to pull out all of the stops before. Whereas this next round, when I went, I was married, had a kid. I'm like,
everything's on the line now.
I have to do it. Yeah, it's getting real. Quick shout out to our buddy Eric Geis. He says, "Go get him, guys! Always a pleasant surprise to catch you live." Likewise,
thank you.
Yeah, Eric's amazing. He's got his own podcast, Got Tech. So to all the listeners out there, check it out. He's got a great setup at his spot too, where he's working. So a lot of great stuff. Speaking of great stuff, I want to get into your book. The perfect 10, right? 10 students, 10 mindsets, one definition of perfection. So I'll let you just take the reins and go for it. What can you tell us about the book?
Sure. So, it started kind of with my own experience, right? Like I could have been defined as a college failout. I could have been defined as a really bad student, but there's also doctor in front of my name. So clearly I had potential to also be a great student, right? Like there's something that was missing between what my capability was and what the reality was, in my grade school career. So becoming a teacher, those are the students that I seem to connect with a lot. The students who were really struggling in school, and they'd be like, I'm not a good student. I have a 1 point whatever. I was like, hey, I had that too. And we'd connect and, we'd have some great conversations. Well, I found out that a lot of those students were just what you were talking about. They were getting lost in the system. There were things that were at play against them. There were things, maybe teachers who weren't on their side, or maybe parents who didn't believe in them, or maybe it was just their peers kind of bringing them down, or whatever the case might be. But for all these different reasons, these students were struggling in school, but they were amazing. They had so much potential. They had so many talents, so many skills, and I was blown away by them. And what would then happen is I go in the teacher's lounge, or, people would go into my classroom, and they'd be like, oh, you have this person, this one's going to drop out. This one's a drug addict. This one's a criminal. I'd be like, what? What are you saying to me? This is an amazing student. Do you know what skills they have? Do you know what strengths they have? And I would always be at odds with these teachers. Like it wouldn't work out very well. So I started talking to some of them after they graduated. And, before they graduate, I'm just saying in my head, I think this is a really good person. But after they graduate from high school and they start becoming who they're going to be, I'm like, well, now I have proof. Like you are definitely awesome and everybody can see it. Why didn't they see it back then? And we started talking. And at the same time, I got connected to EduMatch and Sarah Thomas. And I wanted to not just write my story and be like, hey,
Right.
you know, I wanted to be able to tell parts of their story as well. So I started talking to them like, hey, you want to get your story out? And they're like, yes, I want to contribute. I don't want any student to feel the way I felt. I don't want students to have to deal with parents that I dealt with and not hear another voice that says, no, that's not accurate. Or I don't want other students to deal with what teachers told me and believe it. And the biggest one, I don't want students to tell themselves, I'm not good enough because I'm not like X, Y, and Z, right?
Right.
So they were incredibly brave. They're like, let me tell my story. And they did. And they put some awesome quotes into this book. And their stories are just so inspirational. And they dealt with so many different barriers to their success. But the key is they all found a unique way to overcome them. And that's really what the book highlights.
No, that's amazing that you've kind of brought their stories to life, and in a way you're making them stakeholders within what happens within education. It's really this ripple effect that goes out and really builds up everybody, because you need students as part of that community, right? We need that engagement, we need that investment from them that keeps them there, but makes the learning individualized and makes it meaningful. That's something that didn't happen for me in school. And that's one of the reasons why I got into education. Education was not meaningful. My whole educational experience, pretty much minus a few teachers kind of sprinkled here and there, some moments.
Right.
But generally speaking, it was very lackluster. Even in college, especially early in college, minus my English professor, may he rest in peace, Professor Tom West. He died of colon cancer, I believe I found out later, which is a big bummer. But he switched me from a business major to an English major. He just sold me. I took English 101, and I had done very poorly in English in like 6th through 8th grade. I was really low, like in the 20 to 30th percentile, and just worked and worked and worked. And I had a great English teacher freshman year of high school. She really brought me up. And then I started being in the 80s and 90s on those standardized tests. And he saw something in me and he said, hey, you should do this. I think you'd be a great fit. And he kind of walked me through what it's like to be an English major. And I thought, oh, I'll come back to this business thing. And I never did, and stuck with it. And even though I'm still very business oriented, and that plays a big role, I didn't need to get my degree in it. And studying language and all of these different studies that come into something like English made me really well-rounded, I feel like.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't trade that experience. It really made me who I am. I want to give a couple quick shout outs before I comment more on the book and the story. Our buddy Vernon Wright joining us. Shout out to Vernon Wright. Zero Apology Zone family in the house. Woo woo. And he says, two of my
That's
favorite
my mentor.
Right? Yeah, mine too. Two of my favorite EDU stars, and Scott and Kevin. Your story, Kevin, is inspirational. We, the ZeroApologyZone.com fam, are proud of you, and we're cheering you on. Yes, indeed. It's been so cool to see your journey. I'm going to second that. And we have Lisa chiming in and sharing, a former student is a living kidney donor coordinator at a world-class hospital. That is so cool. So cool. Yeah. And then she follows it up by saying she was an English language learner who thought she was stupid. And she corrects the typo there. I hate the non-editing feature there.
That's the worst.
I feel ya. It is the worst for things like that. I can relate. I want to share a quick student story. So there was a student I had a number of years ago, and everybody had given up on this kiddo. They called him all sorts of names. That was the first time I had heard another teacher refer to a student as an expletive. I was like, what? And this was somebody, I respected. I'd like to think it was just an error in judgment. And I think it was. The teacher was very frustrated. This was a challenging student that chose to act up a lot and behaved very sophomorically. to put it lightly. The student was involved in a number of intense shenanigans, which did have some negative effects on classrooms and people. But I was able to really encourage that student and just daily encourage them and say, hey, you mean something to this class community, and you just watch. There's going to come a point to where you're going to contribute something and all eyes are going to be you, and you're going to be seen as the hero. And they said, no, that's not going to happen. You're not going to see it. And I kept saying it, a month or so passed by. And then I can't even remember the exact moment, but there was something, and the students weren't getting what I was saying, and I was getting frustrated. Like, what? I'm explaining this so clearly. How are they not understanding this piece of literature that we're going over right now? And I gave him the floor. He raised his hand, and he just broke it down so succinctly. They were like, when Mr. Nunes is talking about this, here's what he really means. And when he's talking about this, this is what he means. And you see how he's making this connection to this pop culture figure? I was like, wow, he got it, and everybody got it. And then we prepped for that summative assessment, and they did better, right? So I gave him that chance, and he took that role of teacher and leader and really thrived in that environment. And nobody knew what was going on at home. He had absent parents due to no fault of their own. Dad had brain cancer and was not very functional. So dad was his hero, and dad was kind of gone. Very sad story. And then mom had to step it up and be the breadwinner. So she's going to classes, going to work, bringing home the bacon, really
doing everything.
Doing everything. And it was just a bad situation. And he just needed somebody to believe in him. And his journey's not over. I do write about that student in a couple of Rochelle Dene Poth's books, also being put out by EduMatch. So keep an eye out for
awesome.
More on that story. Another great EduMatch author. And you brought up Dr. Sarah Thomas. She's amazing.
She's a star.
Yeah. How did you get linked up with her?
I just I was kind of switching from the education role to thinking about maybe being an education consultant, and then to actually trying to put my money where my mouth is and like, let's do it. And I just started reaching out to people, and she's one of the first people that was like, you know what, I believe in you and I believe in your ideas. Let's do something. And I'm very thankful for that. Like, she really gave me a shot. So shout out to Dr. Thomas, and really the whole EduMatch family has been so supportive. Wouldn't want my book anywhere else. They're just an awesome group of people.
Such a great family there. That's what I think about when I think about EduMatch. It really is like family. I've gotten a chance to know a lot of the authors and people behind the scenes, and they're so generous and great. There's like this genuine warmth, and it comes out in all of the productions that they're doing, and it's so relational. It makes you feel connected, and that's so important to feel that connection, because I just like Maslow before Bloom's in the classroom, right? We as teachers, when we can connect with the company, with the author, we can then absorb more of that and then share it back out.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't even believe it when I finished the draft of the book. I was like, all right, what happens next? And Sarah was like, well, I read it. I'm like, you take the time to read the books that your authors are putting out? Yes, I do. Of course I do. And then this one's going to read it, and then this one. But, like, you can tell everybody loves it. They love being in education. They love what they're doing as authors, and, in whatever roles they play. So those are the kind of people I want to align with always. One of the reasons I like you clearly have a passion for what you're doing. When you're podcasting, when you're teaching, doesn't matter, so I always try to align with people like that, because if you love what you're doing, you're going to produce something great, right?
You have to. And what I love, I really appreciate you saying that, by the way. One thing I really like about you is you're a big risk taker, it's a calculated risk. And I noticed you're not afraid to put it out there. I'm a little more trepidatious when it comes out to that. Like when I was doing Tim Cavey's, I'm still doing it, the Teachers on Fire. 10K push-up challenge. I
Yeah.
didn't want to put it out there that my goal was to be the first one to reach 10,000 push-ups, which I was able to do it. I've slowed down a lot. My shoulders got hurt, so I've been resting them a little bit, lightening up. I was doing over 230 push-ups a day to reach that in the first month and a half. But I like that you're taking those risks and you're sharing those risks because we can join in on that journey.
Yeah.
I think that's a good piece to share out.
And I'll tell you, I mean, when you talk about like education, there's so much that's mysterious about it, right? The behind the scenes of it. So I like being vulnerable because I think the reason I'm getting to the place I'm getting now is because people who have been in it much longer, Vernon is a great example of that. They've been very open and honest with me. And they've told me their successes and their failures. And here's what I tried and here's what I did. And that allowed me to be not just better at what I'm doing, but it allowed me to get to the places I wanted to be quicker. So because I appreciate that so much, yeah, mysterious indeed. Because I appreciate that, I want to also model that, right? That I think is the right thing to do. Is I want to be very open and clear about what I'm trying to accomplish. One of the things I was just talking about it today. I was saying I want to sell 1 million copies of this book.
That'd be so awesome.
That would be super awesome, right? Now, in reality, who knows, right? And even if that does happen, it's not happening tomorrow. That's going to take a lot of time, right? But I want to put my goals out there and be clear about them so that you understand what I'm working towards and why. And why am I working towards that? Well, part of it is my students also profit off the book sales.
That's so cool.
I want to make sure their voice gets valued in a real way to them because I think their stories are so incredibly courageous that I want them to see more than just the value of the pat on your back, like your name is in a book. Yeah, that's exciting for them and they're pumped. Like they're so excited for this. But I want them to see real value. Like, look how many lives you impacted. Look what you've done. So I am being relentless with that. Now, if I fall short of that goal, I will have no problem falling short of that goal and learning lots of lessons along the way and trying as hard as I can to be a better author and be a better educator because I'm still going to end up somewhere further than where I was. Totally fine by me. But I don't mind being vulnerable and open. Like, yeah, this is what I want. This is what I'm hoping for. And here's why. Now everything's on the line. You know that I'm authentic. And whether I make it or don't, hopefully you at least want me to make it. Right? So I'm just going to keep modeling like everyone else has been to me.
Yeah. And I have to share this from Vernon, right? It says, love hearing you talk, not only your goals, but also the intent, outcomes, and great degree of clarity. You're on point, my man, Kevin. I agree.
I learned from the best.
That too, Vernon brings the energy and clarity of voice. I had him on along with Tara Martin, Tisha Richmond, and Jake Miller. It was like awesome.
What a lineup.
So, yeah. So anybody that hasn't seen that episode, it's called How to Not Only Survive 2020, but Thrive in 2021. Not outdated. All of it still applies. It's on YouTube, on the podcast. Just look up Education Today and you'll find it. Or on YouTube, it's at Mr. Noon's Teach. Excellent episode. There is so much. I've gone through that thing a couple of times. I was thinking I need to go through it again because there's so much to unpack. And one thing I love about Vernon is he's very precise. Yeah. With his wording. It's very jam-packed. So he may say a little less, but it's very purposeful. And so that you talked about learning from the best, right? That's something, I wanted to do is go back and watch that because so many people came back to me and said, you know what? I love this episode. Vernon was fire. Yeah. They said everything was good, but just the way Vernon spoke was fire. And I had people reaching out and I tried to connect them with Vernon afterwards because they're like, hey, I got to get this guy. And he's definitely got it going on. I want to give another shout out to Lisa. She's sharing that student she had just celebrated her 40th birthday. So
Wow.
happy birthday to her. Definitely not aging yourself, right? In
Not at all.
education, I feel like we stay young. So even though the beard's getting a little more gray here.
Yeah, I got a few in here. That's why I keep it short.
Yeah, young at heart. Oh, all mine's on the side. I just got a fresh cut, so you really can't see it here, but it loves to show itself right there in the fade. It's actually kind of cool when it grows out a little bit. It's very salt and peppery. I'm embracing it. I'm not going to color it. I feel like, hey, those are my battle wounds, right? Ages me a little bit, but hey, that's okay.
Experience is earned.
Right. And there's so much to be said for experience, right? We both admitted we had failed, but that makes the success so much sweeter, wouldn't you say?
Oh yeah, and I think it increased my gratitude tenfold because
Yes.
I could have not had that thing, and it would have been very realistic. I could have been a working for minimum wage fast food employee for the rest of my life, and it would have been expected with the track that I'm on. So to say I'm here, to say that I can hold a PhD and that I can be in conversations with academics and understand them and contribute, and people want to hear what I want to say every now and then, like, I am just so filled with gratitude that I'm even in that position, because I could very likely not be in it. And I think that's what drives me to write a book like this, and what drives me to connect with students like these, because I understand that that's also happening in their life. And that is like my motivation. That's my drive right there, is I want to be able to extend that gratitude in a real way.
Yeah. I want to jump in here with Jody's comment. She says she wants to add, in the middle of your success, Kevin, you're so generous with your time and energy. And I agree.
Thank you, Jody.
I find that with so many educators in our PLN, right? You mentioned Vernon. We got Tara Desidero she's over in PA. I think of David Hinnell. I'm blanking. I think he's New Jersey. There's so many in our group that are so generous, and I think everybody. In fact, this week I did a general post and I tagged some people, but I said, this goes out to everybody. I appreciate you, and I meant it. It really just warmed my heart reflecting this week on how much people have given to me, and it makes me just want to give back, like you're doing, and highlighting the students that are giving back, right? It's so nice to see the fruits of your labor, to just share a little bit in a student's journey. It's so important. Another share here, Lisa says, love that, Kevin. She thinks that most of her student expectations were that she would be a low income student.
And Lisa, I love that you're connecting your student with some of my experiences as well. I think it sounds so similar. There are a couple English language learners in this book as well. So I'm like kind of connecting those students with the story of yours. And it's just, I think every educator has that experience where they're like, wow, this kid is underestimated. And, to kind of bring the conversation a little full circle and go back to what you were saying earlier, Scott, you had a teacher that stood out to you, that kind of lifted you up, like, hey, you could actually be in English and like you fit here. But that teacher had to work against your own beliefs of yourself, and every teacher, parent, coach, adult in your life, whoever told you that maybe you're not cut out for that. Right. So it's not like they start at neutral and it's like, hey, starting at this base of you could be anything, you could be this. They're starting from, I don't think I can be this, and I don't think I'm good enough for that, and having to pull way up. Now, imagine if all of your teachers focused on that strengths-based aspect. And they're like, what is Scott good at? How can we play to his strengths? How can we build his self-esteem and build him up as a student and help him to achieve his maximum potential? Now you run into that English teacher and he says, hey, you could be this. You say, I know. And that's what I'm going to do. And you get it done. The path would have been much, much easier. So
Right.
that's why I felt like student voice is so important. And I preach it all the time. And I'm like, this book needs to really highlight that, because I've said it since I started in education that my voice doesn't matter. My students are the voice that matters. And that's what we need to build our classrooms around. So this is the opportunity where I can say, look, like, they do matter. Read their stories, understand their experiences, and apply it. And whether you're a parent, a teacher, or a
Mhm.
student yourself, apply what they've experienced to what you're trying to accomplish. And it will inform you much better than a teacher saying blah, blah, blah. Like, it's got to come
Yeah.
from the kids.
It definitely does. And I know after, this podcast here, a lot of people are going to want to know when and where they can pick up your book. So let us know. I know EduMatch is one place. Where else can they find your book, and when does it come out?
It is already on Amazon on pre-sale, which is exciting. And in 3 days of this recording, March 14th, it'll be released, paperback and Kindle. I believe it'll be on Barnes and Noble as well. So very excited to see like that release date, and it's coming closer and closer. We are like right there now.
Yeah. And then I know do you know when you're doing your formal EduMatch like release party? Do you have a date for that yet?
That'll be March 14th, so this Sunday at 7 p.m. We're going to have a
Exciting.
party. I was actually just about to post on, I ran out of time before this, but that'll be coming up tonight. So 7 o'clock on Sunday, we're going to party. It'll be a virtual party, but hey, I'm here in Florida, so let's celebrate. I'm so excited. This is where I did my teaching. This is where my students are from in this book. So it's kind of nice synergy. It worked out this way that like I had a wedding to attend, and then my students are right here. So hopefully we get to celebrate together. I know with social distancing, that's a little difficult, but at least we're in the same zip code right now.
Yeah, really cool. And maybe they can join in on that release party. And correct me if I'm wrong, you're doing a book giveaway coming up, correct?
Sure are. You guys got to stay tuned. We're going to give away some books during the launch, and then I've got a few more I'm going to give away afterwards as well, in a contest to be revealed very, very soon if you stay tuned.
And then make sure you're following Kevin on social media at Kevin Leichtman. So I'll throw that in the chat. I'm going to post Vernon's comment here. He said, fans of Gary Vee know that he speaks just about what you've mentioned, Kevin, which is accentuating our strengths. Yeah, you got to play to your strengths. That's what I realized right away, even though I'm an English major, right? Once I got into teaching, met all of these like tenured teachers that have these advanced degrees and not just anything, but specifically in English, and they're really good at it. Realized, oh, you know what? I'm not going to be a Mr. Hayden, nor do I have the drive to be a Mr. Hayden, like this expert on grammar. Mr. Hayden's my buddy Chris Hayden here locally, great teacher. He got Teacher of the Year for good reason. He just kills it. He knows how to teach, and I learned a lot from him, but I knew my passion did not lie in teaching grammar and syntax. That's not my strength. Now, when it comes to writing, yeah, especially creative writing, okay, I got you there. And I knew, and thankfully, one of my master teachers and my program director, when I was going through the teacher credentialing program, let me know, hey, play to your strengths. And she said, hey, tech is going to be one of your strengths. She said, tech and relationships. And so that was money in the bank, and I just doubled down on that, making sure to do that. Yeah, go ahead, Kevin.
I was just going to say, funny enough, too, Gary Vee, he also had a lot of issues in school. He was not a very great student, and, barely graduated, barely got into college, did it because his parents wanted him to do it, but he had that passion to be an entrepreneur. Now, the first student chapter in this book, her name is Rocky, And I think about her a lot like how I think about Gary Vee. She was the same way. So she came into class, at-risk student, which is a label I hate, can't stand
Mhm.
it, but I know it exists. I know, it's labeled on the computer, so we have to be aware of it. So she was labeled an at-risk student, was not expected to graduate, cut in class a lot, having a lot of difficulty when in class. And I started talking to her and I'm like, so what do you like? What's your passions? And she starts talking about art and graphic design and stuff like that. And I'm sitting here like, oh, that's neat. Like, let's talk more about that. She's like, no, I'm going to be an entrepreneur in that space. And I'm like,
Wow.
okay, cool. Do you have a business plan? And she pulls out a journal with page after page of her business plan, her branding, her marketing strategy.
Whoa.
I mean, like everything. And I'm talking like I had her freshman year and I had her senior year. So I got to see her develop and start this business. And,
Amazing.
I put the business in the book. It's 509am.com. And she makes custom jeans, custom shirts with paint. And her painting is spectacular. So, I think about a story like Gary Vee, and that's what it reminds me of when I see my students and I'm like, this girl had an incredible strength and no one leveraged it. Everyone said she's not fitting the box of what my class is supposed to look like. She's not talking about the things I want to talk about. But now imagine if you're the math teacher. I was her English teacher. Imagine if you're the math teacher and you're talking to a young entrepreneur. There are some numbers that she cares about. you
Yeah.
know there's a way that you can relate the concepts you need to teach to the things that she cares about most in life. And she could have gone from what some people felt was a problem student to one of the most impactful students you've ever met. And a lot of teachers miss that opportunity. So that's why I wanted things like that from her voice, where you can see this is where people missed out. And this is how she overcame it.
That's so cool. I'm so glad you included Rocky's story. I can't wait to read more and read all of the student stories there. And, um, I kind of don't want this conversation to end, but it's got to end at some point. What's one last piece of advice or one thing you would like to share with the audience in regards to the book and the process or the content within?
Phew. that's
Big
a
question,
wide
right?
range. I'm like, oh, where do I even begin? I think I started talking about student voice. I should probably end there. And I writing a book like this, the privilege for me is the experiences I got to learn just from talking to them and giving them space where their voice actually mattered and it had value that was really clear and easy to see. Right. A lot of times we have these students that we'll even say like, hey, you're important to me, your voice is important, but then we get busy with the curriculum, we get busy with the testing, we get busy with the things that we got to do. And when we fall victim to that, and I think teachers fall victim to it, we don't understand how to make the time, and student voice gets put on the back burner. I would recommend it needs to be the opposite. Because if you allow student voice to be at the center of your class, if you give them a platform for that voice and space to explore, not only will every student in that room learn more than what you can teach them through content, but you will learn with them. And when you're co-learners, guess what? It makes learning fun. And now if you want to dive into that content, it will be 100 times more meaningful than you just barking at them for a whole year. So, my advice to anybody, it could be parents, it could be educators, whoever is watching this, even with your own kids, let their voice shine, make it important, and show them and model to them how and why it's important. And you're going to hear more from them and you're going to learn more.
I absolutely agree. And when you were on the podcast before in December, you offered up one great kind of pro tip that I think lends itself very well alongside this student voice option. And I think that's student conferences, having those conversations and being joint partners in the learning. And everybody's included in that, not just you, not just the student, but everybody's together and you're making something better. And then reflecting on John Hattie's work, Invisible Learning, right? The student know what's expected of them. And so they're doing better. They're thriving, and they're not just surviving or just showing up, right? They're actually learning something.
Yeah.
Which is so cool. That's ultimately what we want. I want to remind everyone to follow you, Dr. Kevin Leichtman, on Twitter at Kevin Leichtman. You could follow me, Scott Nunes, at Mr. Nunes Teach, and follow the podcast at Education Today 8, because there were 7 other ones before I started the podcast. And you can catch.
And this is the best of them all.
Yes. Thank you. And you can catch a replay of this on YouTube with the video at Mr. Nunes Teach, and then on the podcast player of your choice. Thank you so much for coming on, Kevin. I appreciate you, brother.
I'm so grateful. Thank you for having me. Had a lot of fun today.
Likewise. Take care.
You too.